Oh, yes, recording in progress. Got it. Okay. So, basically, I was contacted because I've written a lot on kind of mental health and data science. And so this talk is kind of the intersection of that. Dominic did a good introduction of me, but just some quick notes. I am a former academic. I've always loved teaching. I always loved seeing people learn. I've been a data scientist slash bioinformatician for 20 plus years. Unlike a lot of bioinformaticians, I'm not afraid of clinical data. I've taught physicians and clinicians how to work with their data. I currently work as a bioinformatics trainer at DNA Nexus, and I'll show you what that kind of entails in a little bit. But one of my values is that I really believe in psychological safety for everyone. And this is, we'll talk more about this, but this is just so important to me that I have to put it in my bio. So these are a few of the things that I am known for. I will be talking about some of these, but some of these are conferences, some of these are groups, some of these are courses that you can actually take. So we'll have information about this. I love having questions. I try to field questions in real time, so feel free to ask them in chat. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so I always try to start out with too long, didn't read. I just believe that everyone who's attending this talk is you are smart and brilliant people. And part of that is that when you're learning something new is not to beat yourself up. And I really want to kind of stress that. I see a lot of people, they are very hard on themselves when they're learning something new. I think that's just not a great kind of strategy. And, part of it is finding your own crew that you can learn with safely, learn socially. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then when possible, make things public with caveats. So when I started putting this talk together, I think a lot of keynote talks, they make it look like everybody's lives are this kind of straight trajectory. Mine is all over the place. But I was trying to think of what advice I would give to myself if I were starting. And I think number one is to have values. So I'm going to be going over all of these in the following talk. So this is kind of the outline. So number one, have values. Number two, meet people. Number three, learn things together. Number four, build things together. Number five, take care of yourself. And this is a really kind of ties into the theme of Love Data Week. And share things in public. So let's talk about the importance of values. So in short, values help you understand what you want to focus on. So they help you say yes, but most importantly, values also help you say no. And so there are a lot of things that people will expect you to do, but if they're not kind of within your own little value circle, you should feel free to say no. And this was a lesson that took me a long time to learn. But, again, in combating burnout and kind of taking care of yourself, this is kind of number one. So what are my values? So I've always been kind of driven by curiosity. Not only about how people learn, but I've also been curious about other people and what they work on. And also compassion. So that's kind of the title of this talk. So compassion, both for myself and others. So, like I said, when I was putting this talk together, just really wanted to acknowledge that, a lot of times we make it seem like there's a straight trajectory and that, there are ways for everyone is going to become a tenured professor. I just want to kind of question that. So everyone, a lot of the times when you're in graduate school, that's kind of what the trajectory you're on is. You're going to have your own grant, you're going to be a PI. But to me, collaboration is one of the most important things. And this has kind of basically been my kind of way to learn and kind of expand my skills. So I've just always really been a big fan of collaboration. So number one, again, just starting from yourself. So I want to encourage you to be compassionate and gentle with yourself when learning. So data science is hard. I think a lot of us have had like kind of negative experiences in math and, just unfortunate kind of instructors. So I want to encourage you that you have to believe that you can do it, and that when you don't get something, it's okay. You'll get it eventually. And then, I think again, being able to kind of find people to learn with is one of the best strategies. So we'll talk more about kind of the social learning and what that means. So this is some advice that I got from students. I gave an art programming course, and I asked them what would you tell yourself, the person who was starting this course, what would you tell them to kind of know and to kind of soothe yourself? And I thought this was all great advice. So it's okay to not to know how to do something. Practice makes perfect. It's going to be hard to learn, but so much fun and worth it. I mean, I'm a big believer in making things fun and engaging. Dedicate a couple hours for practice a day. And again, part of it is just having this strategy for kind of soothing yourself when you're feeling bad. But I just thought this was a great comment. It's going to be okay. It's really overwhelming right now. But I'm patient and thorough. Hopefully your instructors are going to be patient and thorough. Looking at multiple sources of information, and don't forget to Google. Remember to ask questions. I think this is probably a good life motto. Although maybe nowadays I wouldn't use the word Google, but searching is one of those fundamental skills I teach my students. How do you find good information on the internet to kind of help you learn? So this is, a big fan of word clouds. So this is just basically kind of the summarized advice that people were giving themselves. Definitely, learn is an obvious word, but, lots of things like, basically opportunities, having confidence, having resources, these are all good things. So there's not really a good place for me to put this, but I just want to emphasize this. This is what I tell my students all the time. If something doesn't make sense, take a walk or a break and come back to it. It's basically, you need to let your brain kind of churn through things, and when you're beating yourself up, you're not able to do that. And in that same manner, I think it's dangerous to learn alone. Yes, I'm a video game nerd. So I just want to talk about kind of the potentials of social learning to learn faster, and that having a group makes learning easier. So let's talk about meeting people. And I say all of this advice, and hopefully it's helpful for everyone. Some of this may be stuff that you already know. So in that case, just kind of take it as it is. So who should you meet? Fellow learners. So this has just been kind of what's driven me, is like finding people who are learning the same thing I'm learning, and just kind of learning from them and trying to help them learn as well. But I also think it's important to think about potential collaborators. And, my career has been very much about having very kind of non-standard ways of collaborating. I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit. Also potential employers, obviously. But I mean, what I want to emphasize in terms of networking is the idea of making weak ties. So this is the idea that, you should meet like kind of a lot of people, and you kind of keep them, you kind of keep in touch with them. They might not even be in your field. They might not even be, but they're really, these kinds of ties are very important for networking and everything. So Ben Busby is on the call, not to call him out, but I met Ben through a weak tie, and that's how I kind of got my job at DNA Nexus. So just want to, it's not easy to network. So I just want to give some advice to that. And this is very much from my own point of view. I'm an introvert, and I really thought about, I couldn't do networking. I was just not kind of built for it. But I want to encourage you to know that you can do it. And the thing that kind of unlocked it for me is that networking is not about promoting yourself. It's more about being curious about other people. And, a lot of it is just kind of finding those kind of common ground, those commonalities, and being curious and asking questions. And, a lot of it is just kind of assessing like whether you want to potentially work with them, or, just kind of keep in contact. So I've written an article. Before I move any further, so this is the URL for the talk. So all of these links are going to be in the slides. This is an article I wrote on how to network in a non-slimy way. And this is all kind of advice that I've thought about and that has worked for me. So with that, I think really kind of the main thing is really being curious about other people. And the way you can do this is to work on being good at informational interviewing. So a lot of it is, when I was taught how to job search, it was just very much like, you're asking people what they're doing and kind of how they got there. This is always like important information, but it also kind of helps you make a connection. So I'm an overthinker by far, but so I don't always take this advice, but I would say don't overthink your questions. So like when you practice with it with someone and just kind of get more comfortable with it. And then be genuinely interested in what people do. So I've found that a lot of people, they're not able to kind of make that connection because they're just too busy looking at other people in the room. So just for 5 minutes, just focus on what that person does and try to kind of understand it. And going along with this, I think it's really important to meet people outside of your field. That's one of the things that I've never really liked about academia is that people tend to limit themselves to kind of their subfield, and it's always been kind of a frenemy relationship. So it's never been very kind of, this relationship is always kind of loaded. But I think meeting people outside your field can be very, very helpful, especially in kind of establishing these weak ties that we were talking about. So when you're a student, this is kind of the best advice I can give is if there's a lightning talk session, you should try to attend it. And if possible, you should do it. And I think a lot of people stress out about lightning talks, but the way I kind of think of them is it's a 5 to 10 minute invitation to chat. So it's not necessarily about what you've accomplished, but you might be like, hey, I want to learn more about, ANOVA, or, I want to learn more about kind of machine learning. So when you do this at a conference, basically it's a really great way to advertise what you're interested in. And it's a really great way to meet people with your same interests. So, I love lightning talk sessions, and it's always easy. It's always been fairly easy for me to kind of approach these people. and kind of talk to them about like, what their interests are. It's always been a great kind of way to engage things. Finally, or like, another thing you can do is volunteer at conferences. So I think volunteering at conferences, being a TA for workshops and things like that is a low-key way to meet people. And I've, it's been lots of fun for me. And I think there's something to working on things together. I'll talk more about this in a little bit. So this is this photo here. So I was a TA for the Building Tidy Tools workshop it was our Studio Conf. Now this year it's going to be Posit Conf. So this was just kind of a great opportunity. I met a great group of people who were TAs and the instructors. Ian and Emma were just wonderful, and I just had the opportunity to meet so many people just doing this kind of volunteering. Okay, so now that you've met people, let's talk about learning things together. So I mentioned psychological safety. I just want to kind of talk about the definition and why it's important. So I think this comes from Khan. I'm sorry, I've been out of academia a while. I'm not good at basically noting who did what. But anyway, psychological safety is being able to show and employ oneself without fear of negative consequences of self-image, status, or career. And this has been kind of the keynote of all of my teaching. I think everyone deserves to be in a psychologically safe kind of space. And so I want to show you some ways that you can kind of create that for yourself. This is a little talk I gave about this kind of back when I was at Oregon Health Sciences University. And it's about, just talking about how do you create a culture of psychological safety. So just all of the studies, psychological safety, it's like the cornerstone of effective productivity, like in teams, but it's also the cornerstone of effective learning. And so just want to give you tips to kind of find good groups to learn with. So I definitely want you to think about starting or joining a group by finding your like-minded peers. And help each other learn. But most importantly, I want you to find groups and join them that have codes of conduct. And why is that important? It really establishes a tone for the group, and it also states unacceptable behavior. So you really understand kind of what the group is about, and you will feel kind of safe learning in that group. So I want to talk about an example of a group that I helped create, which was called OHSU Biodata Club, and just kind of some of the lessons we learned about that. So we started this, I was a postdoc when this was kind of started, and we started this as a group that wanted to learn more about data science. We just wanted to expand our skill set. A lot of us didn't necessarily know what was the right things to learn, but we all wanted to learn together. And one of our values was that everyone was equal. It didn't matter whether you were a faculty, you were a postdoc, you were a research scientist or a PhD student. We all were kind of on the same level ground. And, one of the things we just learned was just by co-working, working through problems together, we learned a ton of things. One of the lessons that we learned from Biodata Club is that learners can be some of the best teachers and instructors. And the reasons why is because you remember how hard it was to learn that. My husband's mother, she was a piano teacher for 72 years, and her philosophy was you only need to be about a week ahead of everybody. But I mean, that said, she was so close to learning that particular subject that she really could help people kind of learn all of through all of the difficulties and kind of help people through it. Part of this was just kind of giving these learners like appropriate coaching and pedagogy. So a lot of the times, we'd have a dry run of a workshop that one of our learners were putting together. And, it was just very gentle kind of coaching and helping them kind of find their voice. So these are just some examples of some of the things that we did together. So shout outs to Rory Blucher. And this was like one of the great papers we worked on. So how to make a reproducible paper. So all of this material is going to be available. I'll have a link for this. So if you want to kind of do it in your own group, you can. So one of my students, Connor Smith, did a great Tableau workshop. Lucille Moore and Daniel Yeager did a great Python, SQL, and Pandas workshop. And, Kevin and Emil did this great kind of visualization, basically workshop using R and ggplot2. So what did we learn from kind of starting this group? I have to say, this is, starting a group, it just takes a desire to learn things together. Helping people, like kind of making sure that they're kind of metering out their information and kind of doing it in a way that is kind of compassionate is very important. We had faculty sponsorship very early on, and that was just very important for us to be successful. So I just wanted to highlight, that was Biodata Club. I just want to highlight some other learning opportunities. And again, if you guys have any, or you all have any questions, feel free to ask them in chat. I'll try to field them as we go along. So Tidy Tuesday, how many people here have heard of Tidy Tuesday? Just give me a thumbs up or no one? Anyone?
I have. I was looking for the thumbs up reaction.
Okay, some of you, great. So I just want to kind of make you aware of what Tidy Tuesday is if you don't know what it is. So what it is it's based around a weekly data set, and it's available, the data set is available at this URL, so it changes every week. So here's an example. This was one of my favorite ones, was Animal Crossing. So there was all of this they pulled out all of this and scraped all of the information from Animal Crossing. I'll talk more about this. But the cool thing about it is that you can learn from others' code, like because you all have the same data set, people will post their code and their cool visualizations, and sharing your visualizations and code. So usually it would be on Twitter, using the tags Tidy Tuesday and rstats. I highly recommend this combination, because if you use just Tidy Tuesday, you will get some pictures that you might not want to see, some visualizations. So I'll leave that up to your imagination. But like I said, so here's an example. So this was a great data set about Animal Crossing. And one of the things about Animal Crossing is that all of the villagers have different kinds of personalities. So I was interested in, within the different kinds of species, which ones were unique. So there was only one of these kind of personalities within that particular species. And so this was just my kind of way of visualizing, who did what. If you're interested, there's a link here kind of, and you can see all the code that I used to generate that. I want to talk a little bit about the R for Data Science learning community. So they are the sponsors of Tidy Tuesday, or they do a lot of kind of Tidy Tuesday work. They've got a podcast. This is a great learning community. And I just want to shout outs to John Harmon and kind of all of the R for Data Science community. It's just a great place to learn. They also have a Slack. Talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But yeah, just definitely rfordatasci.com. So you might wonder how this is related to, so this is related to Hadley Wickham's book, R for Data Science, which is at a different URL, but this is kind of the learning community associated with that. Data Visualization Society, again, they have a great Slack. This is a great place to learn and meet people. So a lot of the times, it's just about kind of identifying kind of a sub-channel or subgroup within this. This is like a huge Slack, but there's a lot of opportunities to learn. Shout outs to CSV Conf. So when I was like learning very early on about kind of, leadership and kind of being effective in like the data science community and open science, this was just kind of a wonderful conference to meet people and kind of see what everyone was working on. Shout outs to the Carpentries. So they are so important to me. They are a group that really, focuses on teaching data science to researchers and graduate students, postdocs. I believe in them so strongly that, I'm going to be donating my fee for this talk to them because I think they're just kind of a wonderful group. If you can get involved with them, I think they are just kind of wonderful, not only for the instructor training, but for the community of instructors. I've met a ton of really cool people through them. Then just want to talk a little bit about Mozilla Open Leaders. So this was another thing that when I was getting started was just really kind of a wonderful cohort of people to learn with. Shout outs to Danielle Robinson, who kind of got me into this. And I learned a ton about like, how do you make things safe for people? How do you basically kind of create safe spaces, and how do you encourage people to learn and like do their best? So they're a wonderful group. Okay, so we talked about meeting people. So say you've got your group. So let's talk about building things together and why you would want to do that. Bringing it back to our original theme of compassion, I really believe that compassion really kind of is important in teaching. These are a couple of talks that I've kind of given about really kind of making things understandable and kind of understanding how people cognitively like process things. So these are just kind of a couple of talks. If you're interested in them, just wanted to kind of give you an opportunity to look at them. But let's even talk about the motivation for collaboration. And I have to say that for me, this is what is basically made research and science fun. And not only that, it's a vital skill. So whether you're in an academic consortia, I've been in a lot of those, whether you're in open science, but most especially, I think collaboration is such an important skill when you're moving to industry. It's really everything. Being able, and this is that kind of elusive thing that you'll talk to recruiters about, and they'll say it's fit. But a lot of it is kind of your ability to work with other people. So here's a little bit, this is an article I wrote just about kind of, how to collaborate with others. And part of it is based on this idea of, in theater sports, this idea of yes and. So, you always build on other people's work. You don't tear it down. So this is just kind of some ground rules that I've learned from theater sports about how to collaborate. So like, who do I collaborate with? So, if I meet you and we talk, and there's really great energy, I always feel like we should try to work on something together. So I haven't gotten through all of my list, but it's just one of these things that I think it's just kind of a wonderful kind of way of coming together and learning things. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that I put together with other people. So Cascadia RConf. So this is basically the West Coast Conference for Learning R. And, this was basically put together the first year in 2018, I believe. we put it together kind of on a wing and a prayer. Like I had faculty privileges to like book this room. We thought 50 people would come. Surprise, we got like 250 people kind of in the same room talking about R together. So this is a room at Oregon Health Sciences for the medical students, but it's just kind of a wonderful place to learn because you can plug in your laptops, and it was just kind of this wonderful kind of thing. And like I said, I just want to encourage you because like we started with 6 people just kind of with this vision, and we ended up with this, and it's continuing to go on. This link here, Cascadia R. So if you want, they're taking talk submissions. They're also, it's going to be in person in Seattle. So I know a lot of people here are East Coast, but still it's a wonderful opportunity. They're a great group of people. This is another thing I worked with. So with Jessica Minier, we basically came up with this kind of online boot camp called our boot camp. And we used this kind of framework that Inez Montani built that let us do kind of Code Academy type lessons. And so like it was basically people were able to, you can run this on your phone and you can actually do it. So this is just a very gentle introduction to R and like the tidyverse. So like based on kind of very, very kind of good and tried and tested challenges. So our bootcamp became a course called Ready for R, and that's what I want to kind of end this section on. Part of it, this came at kind of the beginning of COVID, and realizing there were a lot of graduate students who they couldn't get into the lab. So like we wanted to kind of make an opportunity for them. And basically I saw an opportunity to take this course I was teaching and make it free for everyone. So part of this is this kind of the amazing resource called Posit Cloud. So, basically students get access to what's called a Posit Cloud project that has all of the learning lessons, including the videos and everything. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. So there are videos associated with it. And the core of the course is really kind of notebooks. So here's a link here. This is Ready for R sign up link. So if you're interested, still free, still available. Let's see if this is going to work. So here, this is Posit Cloud. I just want to show you a little bit of what the course looks like. Okay. So Posit Cloud itself is this kind of cloud-based kind of workstation, and it gives you kind of access to R and R Studio. And it's basically a way for me to kind of host these lessons and learning notebooks. So like I said, the core of this is really kind of these notebooks, but there are videos that are kind of associated with learning in these notebooks. And, there's lots of different kind of exercises. So like, for example, this loads, oops. Oh, okay. This is the perils of live demo. I know why this is broken, but anyways, so you can see it's really like, there's recordings, there's notebooks, and there's challenges to kind of learn things. So just want to talk about some of the lessons we learned from Ready for R. Just, in kind of collecting like testimony, I think it's been very effective for a lot of people. So if a person fairly new to R and someone who's slowly completing the course, appreciate the explanations, but it's a great way to reinforce learning. And, this was a undergraduate student who took it and just felt like, it just kind of opened things up for them, and especially giving them language to kind of talk about data science. And I think that's one of the hardest things when you're breaking into a field is having the right language. And, I think really kind of the principles of compassion, really kind of helping to build self-confidence for people. I think, it's been very, very helpful for a lot of people. So I showed you a couple of word clouds. So these are there for you to kind of peruse, but just, know that like a lot of people did find it helpful. Don't, and, it's one of those things that kind of about data and sharing and learning. Here's another one. And this was kind of our initial kind of survey, but we had people from all over the place. I think there's a lot more people, and we've gotten to over 1,600 people who've been on the course, which is pretty amazing for something that's just been completely free. Okay, so talking about building things, but really want to kind of dive into mental health a little bit and how to take care of yourself, and talk about a little bit about my own mental health journey. One of the things I learned very early on was managing up. And that means communicating with your manager what you need, but it's a two-way conversation. And I think this is where I got a lot of traction, and like in my academic career was like educating my managers or, my PIs or my bosses about what they're curious about. So I think it was kind of opened up relationships for a lot. That said, I just want to talk a little bit about the situation I was in and why I left academia. So during COVID, basically I had, and I realized a lot of instructors were in this position, but, I put together 5 new classes in a year and a half for different departments. These were online courses on top of that. Also did lots of work on 3 other grants. On top of all of this. So I had 6 bosses, and this was something that I really didn't like because I was always kind of behind on stuff. I told people my strategy was that I never disappointed the same person twice. And people were like, that's great advice. I'm like, that is not good advice. That's terrible advice. It's just a survival strategy. So I think a lot of you in academia, this is like basically my slide to tell you about kind of how not to be. Definitely, you need to have your own grant. You need to have your own security before you kind of do these collaborations. I didn't do that. So it was clear I needed something new. So one of those things to realize is that you are a limited resource. And this is part, again, why you have those values. So you can use your values to decide whether something is worth focusing on. And then use your values to explore possibilities. So, it wasn't until I kind of started thinking outside of the academic box and realizing there was a kind of a place for me outside of academia that kind of things kind of opened up. And again, that theme of self-compassion, because I was just in a ringer. So everyone wanted something right away. So I had to stick up for myself because no one else was going to kind of do that. So this is very topical, kind of again about thinking about managing burnout. And I think, you can give people all of the resources, like, to doing wellness and meditation and all of that. But really, burnout is a systemic bug, and it really needs to be managed at multiple levels. So this is something that I think academia is still very bad at. I'm not bitter, but I think, really kind of a lot of it was just receiving 20 emails to do things that I didn't know I had to do. I mean, just kind of think about that. I think it's just one of those things that, I think everyone needs to be aware that everyone wants something, and that there needs to be a way to kind of manage that for people. And that said, burnout, you can only manage burnout by yourself only so far. This is an article I wrote about asking for help to kind of get better to manage my burnout. So one of those things in managing my burnout was looking for alternatives. So asking around, and understanding what other possibilities there were. And this is where like networking really helped. There was a cohort of people in my network. We're all thinking about, like our situations were not great. Like, so we were all talking about it and seeing what's possible, what other people in our cohort have done. So a bunch of us kind of left academia at the same time, but it was very helpful for me because, it was kind of this built-in support group. Just comparing notes. And again, those weak ties are, what will really help you when you're kind of doing this, looking for alternatives. And that, like I said, one of these weak ties led to DNA Nexus. Not that I would call Jason Williams weak, but just, people that you kind of know on a kind of a smaller basis. Like he basically introduced me to Ben, and that's kind of how I got to DNA Nexus. So let's talk a little bit about my current position. So it's as a basically instructor and course designer for DNA Nexus Academy. One of the things that I love about this job is that being confused is part of it. It's very much about learning things and asking questions. So I just want to give you a couple keywords to think about when you're looking for jobs outside of academia. So definitely kind of instructor is a great one. Now I'm forgetting the terms. So developer advocate, like any of these kind of advocate positions, like they help people learn. And, anything in user experience or user design, I think if you're coming in as a learner, you have valuable skills. So one of those valuable skills is asking questions. So I have to ask questions about our product, which is basically enabling cloud analysis for genomics. And then really kind of working with customers to make sure that they get their questions answered. So within this, one of my duties is for the UK Biobank Research Analysis Platform community. Just want to talk a little bit about this if you've never heard of UK Biobank. So this is a 500K participant data set. Researchers can apply to kind of work with this, but you need to be able to do your work on the cloud. And so part of my job is really to give webinars and plan learning paths to get people from where they are to where they want to be. So here's an example. If you've come from high performance computing, this is like a paradigm that's you're very used to. And I think there was basically a block. People were like, well, I know how to do this, but how do I work it on cloud? And so part of it is really to kind of show the analogies and where it's the same, where it's different, and give people kind of examples and skills to kind of help them out. This is another project I've been working on. This is freely available. I don't think I have the link. I'll revise this in a little bit to give you the link. And it's called Bash for Bioinformatics. And it's just basically all of the Bash that you didn't learn when you, and what you need to learn to actually engage with and do work on RAP and the DNA Nexus platform. So I'm almost done. Just want to talk a little bit about the philosophy of sharing things and where it's gotten me. David Robinson, I believe it was at our StudioConf 2019, had a keynote called The Unreasonable Effectiveness of Public Work. He's very, very much about changing the paradigm about your minimal sharing unit is a published paper. But no, anything on your computer, anything you've worked on, workshops or anything. So if it just sits on your computer, it's not helpful to anyone. But if you put it out in the world, it can be very helpful. So this is a link to that keynote here. But I do want to qualify this. And I'm saying this kind of based on what I've seen with experience of a lot of BIPOC students and faculty. It's really, social media can be a double-edged sword. So I really want to acknowledge that. And just above all, your mental health matters, and kind of being a part of that is being aware and using blocking tools when necessary, because there are a lot of bad apples on the internet, but there are also a lot of good apples as well. So some ways to low-key share your work. Again, Tidy Tuesday, building your own data science portfolio. I will supplement these slides with links on more about how to do that and put that together. That said, I think so I always encourage people to put a data science portfolio together, but I think, the barriers to that aren't technical. I think a lot of them are emotional. So I think basically having places that you can kind of share your work and get other people's opinions on them who aren't necessarily bad apples. So like I said, there are Slack and Discords, like the R for Data Science Slack is really great, as well as Data Visualization Society. If anyone knows of any other Slacks or Discords that might be helpful for people, feel free to put them in chat. And I just want to kind of end with is Twitter worth it anymore? So this is a lot of basically how I met a lot of people. I will say, yeah, it's still useful, but it's just, I don't want to call it anything derogatory, but there are a lot of really bad apples on Twitter. So again, using blocking tools. So in the previous slide, I linked to one called Block Party, just very important because, I just want everyone to be safe and be able to kind of share their work in a safe way. So coming back to the beginning. So this was my advice to grow as a data scientist: have values, meet people, learn things together, build things together, taking care of yourself, and then sharing things in public. And I just want to express my gratitude. This has been a journey. And these are all people who have inspired me, or I've had chats with, they've helped me kind of go where I want to go. Oh yeah, thanks, Ben. Life Sciences Trainers, that's also a great one. So Jason Williams runs that one. Thank you for mentioning that. So this is, if I forgot, if you're not included, that doesn't mean you're important. Oh, thanks, Dominic. So these are, some of these people are students. Some of these people are just kind of amazing. Some of these people I've worked with. Just want to give thanks to everyone. I'm such a nerd that I actually used, I wrote some ggplot code to actually make that. So I just wanted to share that. And just want to open things up for any questions. So here's my information. So you can follow me on Twitter at @tladeras. This is my webpage. I'm also on Mastodon. I'm not particularly kind of 100% effective on Mastodon, still learning, but there you are. Okay, so any questions? Oh, so Jamaica, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you. Thank you so much for this. I've loved it. I've loved it for multiple reasons as well. I can't figure out. Okay, there we go. Put my hand down. So I learned sort of how to code in Python like 2 years ago in a class that I had to take as part of my doctoral program. Yep. And now I'm a TA in the same course. And I don't consider myself to be very good at it, but part of what my role is to help students work through their fear and work through their feelings that they can't do this because they're bad at math, or they can't do this because fill in the blank. Yep. And one of the things that I'm finding that I am good at is helping them, I think, a little bit to work through that. Yep. One of the answers that I keep finding myself giving is that you just have to have a little bit of faith that it is possible to learn these things if you treat yourself with compassion and you take it slowly and you ask questions. But that doesn't feel like a very satisfying answer because it only works in retrospect. So I wonder if you had any recommendations that could help.
Yeah, so I mean, I think about, like, I've had carpentry's instructor training, and I think one of those things is really normalizing the struggle. A lot of the times I will talk about my struggles to learn something, like, just kind of sharing stories, I think can be very helpful for people. And so it makes them feel like they're not alone. And like the other thing I always say is that a lot of the times it takes a lot of bravery to ask questions and courage. And I think it's just really important to acknowledge that. And I always also like really talk about questions as asking questions as taking care of other people, because other people have the same question. It's just maybe they don't have the courage to kind of ask them. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks so much.
Oh yeah, so we've got a question from Cherie. So can we download the presentation? Yes, so this is being recorded. I will place the link to my slides in chat. Just one second. Oops, sorry. That, after years of teaching on Zoom, I still have issues. Okay. So there's the link in chat. But again, the recording is going to be available. So Lauren, would you like to ask your question?
Yes. So I guest teach often in data science classes about copyright. And just this past year, I happened to be guest teaching, and I overheard a conversation where some students were talking about the language of anyone can code, or data science is for anyone, and it's easy to get started, all these things, and how that made them feel when they had trouble, like, well, if anybody can do this, like, what's wrong with me? And it was a very vulnerable conversations, and I wondered if you had any thoughts on that kind of rhetoric around like how accessible and easy this stuff is, and maybe some suggested alternative language to use.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, and again, I kind of go back to carpentry's training. Like, one of the things we learned was never to use the word just. Oh, you just do this, because a lot of things aren't trivial. So I think a lot of it is rethinking that language. And I think, again, it's about normalizing that struggle, and just kind of sharing kind of stories, because it's just one of those things that people learn. That I've heard various things from people, like if you tell people something's difficult, they're going to just give up. But I think a part of that also is like having, like, if you stick with it, it's going to be fun. And like you're going to be learning together. And I think that is one of the big keys to like social learning, is kind of being able to ask each other questions and kind of helping each other in that kind of sense. So hopefully that helped answer that question. Okay, so, well, thank you everyone for attending. It's been a pleasure. And if you have any other questions, feel free to DM me or anything. So thanks, Dominic.
Thank you, Ted.
So I hope that this kind of helps empower a lot of people. Especially students, because I think you all can really kick ass and make the world a better place by kind of learning together. So.